Welcome. Hello. It's Christmas Eve, and we are joining together as spiritual seekers united in community. We gather around our screens tonight to be together as community to celebrate this wondrous night. We always cherish our time together, but tonight, perhaps more than others. We are glad you've joined us to celebrate with carols, with prayers, with songs, and with growing light, to spark our celebrations and illumine our journeys. Along with my teammate Nancy Steves, pianist Pam Patton, vocalists Deb Mooney and Pam Boutillier, along with our audio-visual team of Dara and Brett, along with a host of musicians joining us by pre-recorded video, I welcome you to our time together, our time in community with each other to celebrate the festival of Christmas. Tonight, we invite you to try to let the worries and the tension of 2020 to, for a moment, allow the anxiety of isolation and distance, the stresses of health and economies to fall away, if even for a few moments, in order that we might relish in this time of togetherness, that we might, as though reaching through our screens, be with one another. And so we breathe a calm and quiet breath. We open ourselves to allow the story and the wonder of Christmas take hold of us again, and to bring a vital message of hopefulness to our lives and to the world.
We've been growing our light through this Advent season, a season we have honored as a season for care. Care for each other, care for our world, care for ourselves. And we've lit candles week by week as we've received the light of caring that takes many forms. The care of connection. The care of affirmation. And resilience. And encouragement. In this solstice season, as in our northern hemisphere, we celebrate the return of the sun, the rebirth of light. We light a fifth candle, our Christmas candle. And in this storied season, we kindle the Christ candle, recognizing the spirit of light that lives in each of us, that is kindled and reborn in us again and again, as we orient our lives toward the light of hope and peace and joy and love.
For tonight's Time for All Ages, we have an opportunity to experience a reading of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This work by Dr. Seuss has been around for over 60 years and has a real place in Christmas lore. We call someone who doesn't like Christmas or who works against the spirit of Christmas a Grinch. We know some of these lines inside and out from this story, but the Grinch isn't a villain of Christmas. He may start out that way in the story, but the Grinch has become a story of redemption, a heart that strangely warms and strangely grows. It has become a story of the ability to learn, to become convinced of the power of goodness. This year, Pam Patton put together a reading of this story that she, Rosemarie Cunningham, and Gilda Valley will tell, and that Jim Robertson will take on a role that may have you all convinced, maybe too much. Here, enjoy the reading of How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss.
Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot.
But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not.
The Grinch hated Christmas.
The whole Christmas season.
Now, please don't ask why.
No one quite knows the reason.
It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right.
It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight.
But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small.
But whatever the reason,
His heart or his shoes.
He stood there on Christmas Eve,
Hating the Who's.
staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town, for he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath.
And they're hanging their stockings.
He snarled with a sneer.
Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here.
Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming.
I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming.
For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys.
And then
The noise, the noise, the noise, the noise.
There's one thing he hated.
The noise.
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 Then the Who's, young and old, would sit down to a feast.
And they'd feast.
And they'd feast.
And they'd feast.
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 They would feast on Who pudding.
And rare Who roast beast.
Which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least.
And then they'd do something he liked least of all.
Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small,
Would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing.
They'd stand hand in hand.
and the Who's would start singing.
They'd sing.
And they'd sing.
And they'd sing, 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 sing.
And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought,
I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years, I've put up with it. Now I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how?
Then he got an idea.
An awful idea.
the Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea.
I know just what to do.
The Grinch laughed in his throat.
And he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat.
And he chuckled and clucked.
What a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like St. Nick. And all I need is a reindeer.
The Grinch looked around.
But since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found.
Did that stop the old Grinch?
No.
The Grinch simply said,
If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead.
so he called his dog.
Max.
Then he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on the top of his head.
Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh.
And he hitched up old Max.
Then the Grinch said,
Giddy up.
And the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town.
All their windows were dark.
quiet snow filled the air.
All the Who's who were dreaming sweet dreams without care when he came to the first little house on the square.
This is stop number 1.
The old Grinchy Claus hissed.
And he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist.
Then he slid down the chimney.
A rather tight pinch.
But if Santa could do it,
Then so could the Grinch.
He got stuck only once for a moment or two.
then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row.
These stockings
He grinned.
are the first things to go.
Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant.
Around the whole room,
And he took every present.
Pop guns and bicycles,
roller skates, drums,
Checkerboards, tricycles.
popcorn and plums.
and he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed all of the bags, one by one, up the chimbley.
Then he slunk to the ice box.
He took the Who's feast.
He took the Who pudding.
He took the roast beast.
He cleaned out that ice box as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash.
Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee.
And now
Grinned the Grinch.
I will stuff up the tree.
And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound.
like the coo of a dove.
He turned around fast, and he saw a small who.
Little Cindy Lou
Who was not more than 2.
The Grinch had been caught by this tiny who daughter who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water.
She stared at the Grinch and said,
Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our tree? Why?
But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie.
He thought it up quick.
Why, my sweet little tot?
the fake Santa Claus lied.
There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here.
And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed.
And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up.
Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire.
Then he went up the chimney himself.
The old liar.
On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire.
And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse.
Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses.
It was 1/4 dawn
All the Who's still abed,
All the Who's still a snooze.
when he packed up his sled.
packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings.
The tags and the tinsel.
The trimmings, the trappings.
3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it.
Pooh-pooh to the Who's.
He was Grinchishly humming.
They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo! That's a noise
Grinned the Grinch.
that I simply must hear.
So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear.
And he did hear a sound rising over the snow.
It started out low, then it started to grow.
But the sound wasn't sad.
Why, the sound sounds merry. It cannot be so.
But it was merry.
Very.
He stared down at Whoville.
The Grinch popped his eyes.
Then he shook.
What he saw was a shocking surprise.
Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing.
Without any presents at all.
He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming.
It came.
Somehow or other, it came just the same.
And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling.
And puzzling.
How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags.
And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before.
Maybe Christmas
He thought.
doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more.
And what happened then?
Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day.
And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light.
And he brought back the toys.
And the food for the feast.
And he
He himself.
The
Grinch
carved the roast beast.
This is the Christmas story as told in the 2nd chapter of Luke. In those days, a decree went out from the emperor that all of the empire be registered. All were compelled to travel to their ancestral town to be registered. Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem, the city of David, because Joseph was a descendant of the house and family of David. While they were there, the time came for Mary to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. There were shepherds in the fields near Bethlehem taking care of their flocks that night. An angel appeared to them, and they trembled in awe. But the shepherds heard the angel's message, "Don't be afraid, for this is good news of great joy for all people. This very night a child is born. You will find a baby wrapped in blankets and lying in a manger." Suddenly a whole host of angels appeared, and it was as though the heavens opened in song. Glory all around and peace to all people on earth. The shepherds went quickly to Bethlehem, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger. When they saw this, they told everyone what they had seen. And Mary pondered all these things in her heart. In this first-century story of our Christmas tradition, may we find wisdom for our living. As we celebrate this night for the meaning and focus that it can give to our lives, we're invited on a journey to the first of 2 locations that we're going to visit tonight. Our first stop is the stable. Luke's story, as we just heard, has Mary and Joseph expecting their child, traveling to Bethlehem, and once there, find that their accommodation is not what they expected. I have been on a few trips in my life where the accommodation was not quite what I had expected, although I don't think it holds a candle to this. As the story goes, when the time had come for Mary to have her baby, she laid the child in a manger because there was no room in the inn. In just that one phrase, there's been innumerable Christmas cards, nativity scenes, countless theological papers and study. And so let's talk about what might be considered the most reasonable scholarship and thinking on the topic. There was nothing that we could recognize as an inn that existed in a small rural town in Palestine. Bethlehem was off the beaten road, where Romans would have built services for traveling citizens, and the culture of first century Palestine, not too unlike its culture today, is strongly rooted in hospitality. To choose to stay somewhere other than a home, especially someone whose family is known or a relation, would be unthinkable. Opening up one's home to a traveler would have been expected, it would have been understood. And so what is meant by the word inn? The word that's been translated as inn, kataluma, has meanings in today's English. It's the same word used where they gathered for the Last Supper. But the closest might be guest room. The guest room of a home. The standard one-room village home consists of a living area for the family and a small area approximately 4 feet lower than the living area into which the family's animals are brought at night and taken out each morning. So between these two areas, probably attached to the upper home floor, was the manger where the animals eat. Having animals within the home was a favorable situation since it's a source of heat. I know from cuddling up to a dog and a cat in the middle of a night that they are an excellent furnace. And of course, it guards against the loss of their animals to predators or to thieves. So some homes would have had this lower room wherein they could bring the animals at night. And other homes might have had a guest room to accommodate travelers and visitors. And so when we read the story that there was no room, it is likely saying that there was no room in the guest room. It was occupied perhaps by another traveler. The guest room is full. And really, we can't expect the host to ask prior guests to leave. That would be quite unthinkable. In any case, unnecessary, since there's a large family room right up a few steps that's clean and warm with access to water. It's where the living is done. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in clothes, and laid him in a manger. And so we try to read this story with what we know and from the eyes of a Palestinian who may instinctively think, manger? Oh, they're in the main family room. Why not the guest room? The author then replies, because there's no place for them in the guest room. And the reader concludes, yes, well, the family room is more appropriate anyway, in typical village style. And so this new growing family is welcomed into the heart of another family's home. And the birth happens in a place where all can be together. Think of your definition of family room. A lot of things happen there. It was not a lonely, secluded stable stall in all likelihood, out in the field and separated from all but the animals, as our songs and Western thoughts have taught us. The very idea of sending a family in need out to seclusion to fend for themselves would have been drastically inhospitable and unthinkable. In actuality, us, in our failure to understand, has made us think that there was inhospitable innkeepers and homeowners that wouldn't make room. But rather, isn't it a wonder to look at this story as precisely the opposite? Where there was no suitable room for a birth in a guest room, space was made right there in the center of a home. A family made the space for birth to happen, with the women most likely attending to the mother and the men most likely separated only by a few meters to gather at the other end of the house. And when a bed was needed to place this baby, the manger, a part of the house, the divider between upper and lower, was a logical crib. This is a story, when we see it with these eyes, of beautiful hospitality, of welcome, of community. A baby welcomed into a warm world. A place and a people that became home, became family, if only for a night. When we come to this story and seek its wisdom, we ask the question, when we come to our places of need, where there's no suitable options in front of us, can our eyes be open to the possibilities of community? What community can be found when it's not the one we expected or planned? When none of you are physically coming to church on Christmas Eve, how will we experience community right where we are? How will we be safe and feel the warmth of unexpected community? Through a phone line, through an internet connection, through a screen. In the difficult stables of our lives, we seek some hope and some light to offer meaning and community. In the difficult stables and the challenges of our relationships, we seek the family room of those who can hear the pain of our isolation and loss. In the difficult stables of disaster, of threats to our safety and trust, we seek the family room of those who can provide a safe place, who do the work of shelter and care and the simple gift of rebuilding the structure of our world. In the difficult stables of physical and mental illness, where expectations and hopes for our days are altered, we seek the family room of those who might remind us of the value of each day, the beauty that lies within each of us, and the light that's within every person we encounter. If life has ever been upturned and interrupted by the unexpected, the unplanned, the unforeseen, the startling, the sudden twist that bewilders, hello 2020, then we have known this Christmas story. And we might find some hope and meaning in it, because the story of the stable invites us to open ourselves to the gifts and surprises that come in the most needed times of our lives. Not to set our eyes to the heavens for some phenomenon or some magic, but to the sacredness that can emerge when we discover friendship and understanding where there was at first loneliness, light where there was once darkness, possibility where there was once dead end. We open ourselves to the sacredness that can emerge when we're open to new people, new experiences, new community. That is the place where life and love, friendship and community is born. Wherever shadows grow, a light may gleam that spreads its arms through the night to welcome us in, like a warm hearth in a loving family room. May it be so for our Christmases in so many ways.
Glorious song of
This is a night to hear wisdom ancient and new. I want to share with you from the writing of Barbara Brown Taylor in her book, Learning to Walk in the Dark. In the passage that I want to share with you, she's describing an experience we've all had, an experience of insomnia. And in her sleeplessness, this is what she does. There's one cure for me on nights like this. If I can summon the energy to put on my bathrobe and go outside, the night sky will heal me. Not by reassuring me that I'm just fine, but by reminding me of my place in the universe. Looking up at the same stars that human beings have been looking at for millennia, I find my place near the end of the long, long line of stargazers who stood before me. And thanks to them, I can pick out some constellations to which they gave names. The wobbly W of Cassiopeia, pointing to Andromeda, and Pegasus above, and Perseus below. The North Star in the handle of the Little Dipper pointing straight to the cup of the Big Dipper below. Long after I'm gone, those stars will still be there, giving others their bearings after their beds have pitched them overboard. All light is late, wrote the poet Lee Young Lee, reminding me how long it takes for light to reach my eyes. When I watch a star fall, I'm watching a funeral that took place a long, long time ago. Stars are light years away. Galaxies are millions of times that far away. Chet Ramo, who is to astronomy what Lee Young Lee is to poetry, tells me that if I could find quasar 3C273 in my backyard telescope, I would be looking at a point of light that started heading my way more than 1.5 billion years ago. Compared to that, the sun is a newborn. Hundreds of thousands of stars flared up and burned out again before the Milky Way galaxy delivered her first sun. All these years later, every atom on Earth comes from the sky I'm looking at. Hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, iron, the basic building blocks of everything from the high peaks of the Himalayas to the low flutes of my bones. If I cannot imagine eternal life any other way, I can start with the carbon atom. Since everyone that ever existed is still around here somewhere. It may have spent some time in a rock before taking up residence in the ocean, then cached everything in for a spell in the atmosphere before moving to a plant and then a human body. Whether that body ends up in earth or fire, the carbon will go on living, joining up with a couple of oxygen atoms for one leg of the journey before taking up with some made of nitrogen or hydrogen for the next. Every one of these atoms came to earth from the heavens. The lead in my pencil might as well declare that it's made in Orion as made in China. I and everything I love have come forth from the furnace of the stars by a process so full of unfathomable, life-giving grace that my earlier worries strike me as cheap. Having summoned the energy to put on my bathrobe and go outside, I can go to bed now. The stars are in their heavens, and all is right with the world. In these words, may we find wisdom for our living. Every year, we come in from the cold and the dark to sit in the soft light and sing our midnight dreams. Dreams of the miracle of birth, our longing for a world where there's nothing to fear, our hope that perhaps peace and goodwill have come. But the story that gives us this night insists on taking us on a field trip every year. Yes, literally, a field trip. We just get our coats on, get our hands warmed, get our eyes adjusted to the gentle light near the manger, and the story comes along and forces us out into a field to shiver in the cold with a bunch of scared shepherds. What is the wisdom this story shares that can only be found in the field? Why is it we urban dwellers are forced to discover something about the wonder of birth in a frosty field every year? As someone who hasn't lived in a city for almost 2 decades now, I'm going to just hazard a few guesses to get us started. I wonder if perhaps we have to go out into the field on a night like this to get far enough away from the artificial light to see the wisdom that's found only in the night sky. In the field, as we look up, we remember, as Barbara Brown Taylor did, that the night sky has the power to heal us. Not with its reassurance that all is well with the world, but instead with its capacity to remind us of our place in that world. That we're sparks of an ancient but eternal light, part of the long, long story of the universe giving birth. When we find ourselves in a field open to the night sky, we remember that our life, all life, is born in the stars. And we are in the presence of our ancestors. In the field, we remember that life is born in darkness. The dark underground world of seeds germinating, of the unseen taking form long before its beauty will break the soil to nourish or astonish us. We remember that life is born in the darkness of the womb, arising to the great fusion of flesh and spirit, matter and energy, miracle and mystery. When we find ourselves in the field, we remember that life is fragile and vulnerable, that security is an illusion, a lie the powerful seek to sell us. But we're all just like the shepherds who live in the fields, keeping watch by night, knowing despite all our comforts and our conveniences, the field forces us to face the truth that we are vulnerable to the changes and chances of life. We're exposed to the elements, to the mundane and the miraculous that happen in the fields on earth and in the fields of our flesh every day and every night. in the open field under the cover of darkness, we remember that spaciousness is not the same as emptiness, that we are not alone, that we may feel alone because we fail to tune into the symphony of light the sky brings to every field. We feel alone because we're unable to hear the song that's being sung to us, the song that seeks to bring us courage, to quiet our fears and focus our intentions on making haste toward the birth of goodness that would make our planet a place of peace. When we come in from the cold and dark of the story to sit and sing our midnight dreams, we remember we're a community shepherding what life has placed on our watch and under our care. The wisdom we find in the field is not treasure buried there, but treasure carried deeply within us. Treasure recovered in deep memory as we reenact this story year after year. Fields everywhere invite us in. Fields of memory and fields of hope. Fields where we work and fields where we rest. Fields of forest walks and fields of computer screens. Fields of learning and fields of leisure. Fields of family, fields of friends. Fields everywhere ask us to be alert, to look up, to listen carefully, for there is much to seize us with wonder, much to astonish us with possibilities, much to awaken us to the miracle of life if we'll open our ears and our eyes and our hearts to the wisdom that seeks us in the field where we are living in this moment. In this field, the sky above us tells us that we are not lost. There are still stars to light our night. There are still stars that guide us as we navigate through the darkness of isolation, the uncertainty of a pandemic, the disorientation of our lives turned upside down. Ancestors to companion our loneliness. That wisdom sings to us in seeds and stars, in stables and fields, in our first deep breath, and in our last shallow breath, and in every breath between. Shall we listen for the song in the night sky, keeping watch with our companions in the ancient story that point us once again toward the peace we seek?
The
Tonight we have the opportunity, as we have through the month of December, to offer a special gift to an agency that needs it, especially at this time of year. No Room in the Inn is our annual opportunity to help provide safe and affordable housing in Edmonton for those who are homeless and at risk. This year, that offering is designated to support 2 women's shelters in downtown Edmonton, LaSalle Shelter and St. Catherine Drexel Place. They will use that money to do backyard upgrades so that the children in care there can safely play outside on the properties, something that's needed especially in this time of isolation. We are grateful for all the ways that you have and continue to support SSUC, and this is a way that we can directly impact the world of homelessness, the world of children and women in need. Please donate either by e-transfer or by our website donate page, or by mailing a check to our office. All of the information you can find there on your screen. As we take this Christmas message into the action that we take to live out Christmas, to make it meaningful in more than just a celebration in a family room and in a field, we hope to make an impact for those who need it most. We're joined by video recording by a musical ensemble that recorded this piece a couple of weeks ago, and we get to share in its delight tonight. In this Christmas night, in this eve before Christmas Day, we pause with one another to give voice to our hopes and our dreams, our intentions. We pray with one another, offering the words that you find before you, where we are in our place,
we place our voices with one another. We are together in this night to celebrate value and meaning within this ancient celebration of Christmas. As we honor this great festival of light, may we cultivate an open heart and generous spirit for all who need an extra measure of resilience and encouragement. May we have ears for the songs of peace and eyes for the wonders of this life. In the challenges, in the changes, in the uniqueness of this year's Christmas, may we discover within us a heart intent on creating a world of hope and love, of justice and joy. It is these commitments and actions that will bring Christmas this year and every year. May it be so.
Christmas would not be the same without candlelight. Earlier, many of you lit candles with us at home. We invite you to pick up one of those candles and hold it, or light a taper that you can hold as we sing our final carol. To celebrate the gift of this night is to celebrate newness in the world, newness in our lives, all that can be birthed when we embrace hope, when we live with love, when we express joy, and when we live and work for peace. Nothing symbolizes this newness better than when our light is ignited, grows, and spreads. Tonight, we may each be in our homes, but the candles we light join us in our commitment to the hope and wonder of Christmas. Join us in lighting our candles, in holding them, in singing, as we did in previous years, all together, one voice, many lights.
Tonight, every flame of hope and love, every spark of joy and peace, every effort to do good, every honorable intention, every act of kindness, every truthful, compassionate word brings light into the world. Let's journey through these next days with the radiance of the light that is within us, the light that is among us, the light we see in each person, the light that shines in the darkness, and no darkness has the power to overcome it. May we have the courage to let our light shine, bringing the brilliance of Christmas light to every moment. Tonight, we keep our flame burning. We hold light's hope in our hands and in our hearts. We trust this light, knowing that the darkness is never so deep, no night so long that it can ever hold back the dawn, that morning comes again and again. May you have a cherished Christmas celebration. Stay safe and healthy. From those of us here who stand in for those of you there, stand with you where you are, from our hearts to yours. Until we meet again, Merry Christmas.